Do you need a trust or is a will sufficient for your situation? Well, in today's video, I'm going to break down the differences between wills and trusts and what you should be doing to plan for your estate. Now, this is part one of my 4-part masterclass series on estate planning. I'm Matt Sorensen. Let's build wealth. Now, a trust and a will are both estate planning documents used to plan for who gets your assets when you pass on. I know this isn't a fun thing to think about, and you have a lot of other priorities in your life, but this is critically important to your family, to the loved ones that you will leave when you pass on. Do not leave them with no document, no idea of what your intentions are. They're already gonna be dealing with the grief when you pass on. Take accountability and responsibility and get your estate done so that when you pass on, you can leave a legacy to your family, not a bunch of problems for your family to fight over. So let's first talk about how they're similar. A trust and a will are similar in the sense that they both specify who gets your assets when you die. When I pass on, are my kids getting it? Is my spouse getting it? Is my friend? Do I have a business partner gets my share in the business? What's happening to all your assets? You can specify those things in a trust as you can in a will. And those are both important documents, but a trust has a lot of benefits that a will does not have. The major downside to a will, and why most lawyers will recommend you to do a trust, is when you pass away and you have a will, it's nice because you specified who gets what, and trust me, that is better to have than nothing. But what happens is your family, whether this is your surviving spouse or your kids or other loved ones that are left to deal with this mess of your finances and your assets and your debts and whatever it is, they've got to go work through this, but they need to go to court. They have to go to something called probate court, which is expensive. They need to hire a probate lawyer. They need to provide notices to creditors. They need to publish the will. There's a whole process that goes through in the court system that is public when you have a will. The main benefit to a trust, and why most lawyers will recommend a trust instead of a will or in addition to a will, is a trust avoids probate. What happens in a trust is you still specify your assets and who gets what, but you appoint someone called a trustee in the trust. And the trustee under the trust has authority to distribute the assets upon your death. They do not go to court. They do not have to get an order from a judge that approves the will and says you can distribute the assets. When you have a will, that's what the executor, the person you appoint to carry out your wishes in your will, that's what they have to do. They have to go to court. They have to get an order from the judge that says, okay, you can carry out these things and distribute out the assets. The trustee under your trust doesn't have to do any of that. They're not going to probate court. And what if you have properties in multiple states? Let's say you live in Arizona, but you have a home in California, or you live in Michigan and you have a home in Florida. Guess what? When you die, you're doing probate in both states. Let's say you've got 10 rental properties in 10 different states. You're doing 10 probates. Any state that you have assets like real property, you're gonna have to go do probate in that specific state. But if you have a trust, you will not have to go to probate in any of those states because your trustee will be able to carry out your wishes through the trust itself. Now, I've mentioned the trustee of a trust. This could be your surviving spouse, or this could be one of your kids, or maybe a friend or family member, a business partner, someone that knows about your estate and your affairs that can carry out your wishes. Now, they're gonna have this trust document that says what you wanted to happen. And this is the important part, is they then carry out those wishes. You can say, if my kid has an alcohol or drug addiction, they don't get anything from the estate. It is held in trust. And then once they clear up that drug or alcohol addiction or whatever the issue is, then they can get their inheritance from the trust, and the trustee can then later distribute assets to them. Also in your trust, let's say one of your kids or your heirs has a creditor issue. They have a judgment against them, and if they get an inheritance, it's just gonna disappear and go to the creditor that they owe a bunch of money to. Well, we don't want that. So you can put in a spendthrift clause into the trust that says, hey, if my kid has a creditor chasing them down, they don't get any distributions. Maybe we're gonna help cover some of their expenses or things, but we wanna protect this money from the creditor getting at it, so we will hold it in trust. So there are a lot of benefits to the trust. I can have more control from the grave, and I also get to avoid probate. That is why most lawyers are gonna recommend a trust for anyone that has more than $100,000 of assets. A trust is just gonna be worth it because you're gonna have more controls and more things you can do, and you will stay outside of probate. So that's the difference between a trust and a will. Both are ways you can specify what happens to your assets when you die. But remember, the trust has a lot more protections, a lot more controls I can put in place. I get to control things from the grave and create incentives and protections for my heirs. And also, I don't have to go to probate court. Now, I know thinking of your death and planning your estate after you're gone is not fun, but do this for your family. I've seen so many families torn apart because there was no plan. They end up fighting over assets when there didn't need to be any contention tension amongst the family. They already have so much grief and things to deal with when you pass on. The last thing you want to leave is a mess. Now, the best thing you can do is have a well-coordinated trust where they don't have to go to court. It's clear what you wanted. There's a trustee that's going to carry on the wishes. And that is the difference of what turns your estate into a legacy instead of contention for your family. So take the time to get your estate plan in place. Now, my law firm, KQS Lawyers, has been setting up estate plans across the country for years. We can help you get yours done. And whether you work with us or some other lawyer, I don't really care. I just want to make sure you get it done so you can rest assured that your family will be taken care of in the future after you pass on. Now, please subscribe to my channel. I hope you found this video helpful. I've got a lot of tips on saving taxes, protecting your assets, and building wealth. I'm Matt Sorensen. We'll see you next time.